Ibrahim Traoré was not a man who ever expected to have the whole world watching him. He was born in a small village in West Africa, in a country most people couldn't even point to on a map. He was raised by his mother and father, both farmers, who believed that hard work and honesty were the most important things in life. As a boy, Ibrahim would walk many miles to school each day. He dreamed of becoming a teacher, or maybe a doctor, someone who could help his people have better lives. But fate had something different planned for him. After many years of study, hard work, and a deep commitment to his people, Ibrahim eventually became a leader in his country. He wasn't flashy or rich, wore simple clothes, spoke softly, and always listened carefully. People respected him not because he was powerful, but because he cared. He wanted his country to move forward, but not at the cost of losing what made it special. The land was beautiful fields of gold, forests full of rare animals, rivers running with fresh water. But under the ground, there was something even more valuable: gold and oil. For years, other countries and companies had tried to take these, rich as promising development. But leaving only a few jobs and a lot of broken promises, the people in Ibrahim's country had suffered for generations. The roads were rough, schools were small, and hospitals were crowded. Most people lived simple lives, growing crops, tending animals, and hoping for a better future. Everyone knew the country was rich in natural resources, but it seemed that wealth was always slipping through their fingers. People whispered about leaders who had sold the country's treasures for their own benefit. But with Ibrahim, things felt different. He was not interested in getting rich. He wanted everyone to have enough food, enough water, enough hope. One hot afternoon, everything changed. News came that a group of important visitors was flying in from America. They said they were coming on behalf of a man who everyone in the world knew, Donald Trump. Even though he was no longer the President, Trump was still a famous businessman, and his companies were always searching for new opportunities. The visitors were bringing a proposal, a deal for the country's gold and oil. If Ibrahim agreed, they promised to bring millions of dollars of investment. They talked about new schools, roads, hospitals, almost anything the country needed. The announcement was a shock. No one had expected a deal of this size. The whole country buzzed with excitement and worry. Some people cheered, dreaming of jobs and new businesses. Others whispered about the dangers of trusting foreigners again. In the past, similar deals had brought hope at first, but ended in disappointment. Ibrahim listened as his advisors explained the proposal. It sounded amazing at first. The Trump organization would build factories, hire local workers, and share the profits with the government. There would be scholarships for students, equipment for doctors, and even support for farmers. All the things the country needed were right there on paper. But Ibrahim was a careful man. He had seen how things could look good on the surface, but hide dangers underneath. That evening, Ibrahim sat quietly in his small office. The sun was setting, filling the sky with gold and orange. He looked out over the city, watching children play soccer in the dusty streets. He thought about his parents, his friends, and all the people who trusted him to do what was right. He remembered stories of old leaders who had signed big deals only to find that their land was destroyed and their people left with nothing. The next morning, Ibrahim met with the American visitors. They were all smiles and expensive suits. They shook his hand, took photos, and spoke with confidence. "Mr. Traoré," they said, "this deal will make your country a shining example for Africa. You will become one of the richest nations. On the continent, we are here to help you." They opened thick folders full of colorful charts, graphs, and maps. They spoke of gold mines and oil wells, of jobs and roads. They made promises about respect and partnership. But Ibrahim listened closely, not just to their words, but to what they didn't say. He asked questions about the environment, about how much control his people would have, and what would happen if things went wrong. The visitors smiled and answered quickly. But Ibrahim noticed they often changed the subject. He asked to see the details of the contracts. He wanted to know who would own the land, how much money would go to the people, and how much to the foreign company. When he pressed for answers, the visitors promised to send more details soon. Ibrahim knew he could not make this decision alone. He called a meeting with his closest advisors, teachers, doctors, elders from the villages, and business leaders from the city. He asked them for their honest opinions. Some said the country needed the investment badly. There were too many people out of work, too many children without books or clean water. Others said to be careful, warning that if the country lost control of its resources, it could be a disaster. At night, Ibrahim could hardly sleep. He read books about other countries that had made similar deals. He learned how sometimes these deals brought new hospitals and schools, but sometimes they left behind pollution, poverty, and broken dreams. He wondered if he was being tested, if this was his moment to show true leadership. A few days later, a small group of young people visited his office. They carried a simple letter asking him to think about their future. "Please don't make a decision in a hurry," the letter said. "We trust you to do what is right for all of us, not just for today, but for tomorrow." Ibrahim kept thinking about the promise he had made to his mother when he was a child. He had promised to always protect his people, no matter what. Now, as the leader of the nation, he realized just how heavy that promise was. Everywhere he went, people watched him closely. The newspapers ran headlines about the American visitors. People on the radio argued about whether Ibrahim should say yes or no. Some even called him a hero already, while others said he was a fool for waiting so long. But Ibrahim knew that real leadership meant more than just saying yes to the first big offer. It meant thinking carefully, asking hard questions, in remembering who you are. He felt the eyes of his ancestors on him, as if they were reminding him of everything the country had already lost, and everything it could still gain. The days passed slowly, but Ibrahim did not rush. He told the American visitors he needed more time. He asked for more details, more answers, and more respect for his people's right to decide. He knew that whatever happened next, his choice would change the country forever. The world was watching. But for Ibrahim Traoré, the only thing that really mattered was what was right for his people and for the land he loved. Ibrahim Traoré prepared himself for the next meeting with the American visitors. He wore his usual clothes, nothing fancy, just a clean shirt and trousers, like any other day. But he felt the weight of his country's hopes on his shoulders. As he entered the government building, he could see the curious eyes of staff and guards. Some looked worried, others hopeful. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Inside the conference room, the Americans were already waiting. Their faces were bright with smiles, but Ibrahim noticed how they watched each other and whispered when they thought no one was listening. The main representative, Mr. Collins, stood up to greet Ibrahim and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Mr. President, for making time for us again. We are excited about the future together," he said in a friendly voice. The table was covered with folders, laptops, and glasses of cold water. The Americans started the meeting with a fancy presentation on a big screen. There were beautiful pictures of roads, schools, and hospitals. The charts showed numbers that went up and up, as if only good things could come from this deal. They talked about bringing electricity to every village, giving scholarships to students, and even helping with modern farming equipment. Ibrahim listened quietly, nodding sometimes. He wrote down questions on a notepad. He noticed that the promises were very big, almost too big to believe. When the Americans finished, everyone in the room clapped politely. Then Ibrahim began asking his questions. He started with the gold and oil, the heart of the deal. "Who will own the land once your company starts working there?" he asked. Mr. Collins replied that the land would still belong to the country, but the company would need full management rights for many years. Ibrahim pressed, "What about local jobs? Will our people be trained and paid well?" The Americans assured him there would be many jobs, but they would need to bring in some of their own experts first. When he asked about the environment, about the rivers and forests, the answers became less clear. They spoke about following best practices, but did not share details. Ibrahim paused and looked around the room. His advisors were silent, listening carefully, turned back to the visitors. "If there is pollution or something goes wrong, who will fix it?" The Americans said there were plans for this, but Ibrahim noticed they quickly changed the topic. To talk about money and growth, the meeting lasted for hours. Every time Ibrahim tried to get a clear answer, the Americans offered more promises instead of facts. They kept saying, "Trust us. This is the best deal you'll ever see. By the end of the day, the folders on the table were full of agreements with small writing. Ibrahim asked for copies to study at home. That night, Ibrahim called a private meeting with a group of people he trusted most. There was the finance minister, who understood money and contracts. There was a wise old judge, who knew the law better than anyone. A young university professor was there, with ideas about development and education. And there was Ibrahim's childhood friend, who still lived in the village and saw life as it really was. Ibrahim showed them the papers from the Americans. They read together, line by line. The judge pointed to hidden details in the contract. If you sign this, they can take the gold and oil for 30 years before we get full control again. The professor said, they promise jobs, but there is nothing here that says how many or what kind of jobs. The finance minister shook his head. The profit sharing looks good. But with all the expenses they can charge, we may not get much at all. His childhood friend frowned. They say they'll protect the land. But in the past, companies have left villages with dirty water and sick animals. Ibrahim listened to them carefully. He thought about what would happen if he signed the deal. Yes, there could be new roads and money in the government bank. But what if the land was ruined? What if the money never reached the villages and the people still lived in poverty? He could not forget the faces of the children who had come to see him. He could not break their trust. He decided to gather more advice. The next day, he called for a meeting with elders from different regions. Farmers, teachers, doctors, and even young students. He wanted to hear from everyone, not just the powerful. The meeting was simple, held in a big open room with wooden benches. People spoke honestly, without fear. Some of the elders remembered past deals that had gone wrong. We saw our forests cut down and our rivers poisoned, one old man said. At first, they built new houses and gave money. But after a few years, the jobs were gone, and so was the wealth. Others said they were tired of being poor. Maybe this time will be different, a young teacher said. We need to give our children a better future. Ibrahim wrote down their words. He promised to keep listening and to keep asking questions. He invited a group of local lawyers and economists to read the contracts and look for problems. The lawyers found many clauses that gave the American company too much power. Economists said the deal looked good in the short term but could cause trouble later. During this time, the Americans were busy too. They invited Ibrahim to fancy dinners and showed him pictures of American cities. They promised to bring technology to make him famous as the president who made his country rich. But Ibrahim stayed polite and careful. He thanked them for their offers, but kept asking for more time and more details. As the days passed, Ibrahim's own advisors started to disagree among themselves. Some said the country was in trouble and needed investment now. They worried that if they said no, the Americans would go to another country and they would be left behind. Others said it was better to wait, to find a partner who would truly respect the country's rights. News about the meetings spread quickly. People in the markets and on the radio talked about nothing else. Some accused Ibrahim of being too slow or too afraid to make a decision. Others said he was the only leader who had ever truly cared about the future. In the middle of all this, Ibrahim began to wonder if he was doing the right thing. He remembered how his father had once sold a goat to pay for his school fees. His father had told him, never sell what you can't get back. Ibrahim realized that the country's gold and oil were like that goat, precious. But once gone, they could never truly be replaced. One evening after another long meeting, Ibrahim went for a walk in the village where he was born. He talked with old neighbors, listened to their stories, and watched children playing in the dust. He felt a deep love for his people and his land. He knew that any decision he made would change their lives forever. Back in the capital, Ibrahim started asking even harder questions. He wanted to know exactly how the American company would protect the rivers and forests. He asked for proof that local people would be hired and trained. He demanded to see real numbers, not just promises. The Americans began to look uncomfortable. He said that too many questions could scare away investors. They warned that the world was watching and that if Ibrahim did not say yes soon, the opportunity might disappear. Ibrahim thanked them again. Well, but inside he felt more determined than ever to protect his country. He knew that a good deal should be clear and fair, with nothing hidden. As the days turned to weeks, Ibrahim became a symbol of hope and caution. People waited anxiously for his decision, wondering what kind of future he would choose for them. The rumors grew louder every day. In the busy markets, at the bus stops, and even at schoolyards, people spoke about the American deal. Some said the gold and oil would make the country as rich as any in the world. Others worried that everything they loved, the land, the trees, the clear rivers, could be lost forever if the wrong decision was made. The whole country seemed to be waiting, hearts full of hope and worry at the same time. Soon, the news of the American proposal spread far. Beyond the borders, journalists from other countries flew in to report on the meetings. Foreign TV crews filmed stories in front of government buildings, trying to guess what President TRAORÉ would do. The world's eyes were suddenly on this small African nation, and on the man who now held its future in his hands. At the same time, people inside the country grew more restless. In the capital city, small groups gathered in parks and public squares, waving signs and chanting. Some groups wanted President TRAORÉ to accept the deal quickly. They believed the American company would bring jobs, money, and new hope for families who struggled every day. These people talked about roads that would finally be fixed, children who could go to better schools, and farmers who would have new machines to work their land. They dreamed of a different life, one with more comfort and less hardship. But other groups had a different dream. They feared the mistakes of the past would repeat. Some remembered how foreign companies had once promised help, but had left behind nothing but empty factories and polluted rivers. These protesters begged TRAORÉ to say no to the deal, or at least to make sure it truly helped local people. They wanted new laws to protect the environment, and they demanded that the country's natural treasures should belong to its people, not outsiders. The protests grew larger. In some cities, hundreds marched together. In the countryside, elders and farmers gathered beneath shady trees to talk about what was happening. Some people wrote letters to the president, others called radio shows, while a few even traveled long distances just to speak to someone in the government. Everywhere Ibrahim went, he heard the same message: people were afraid to lose everything, but also afraid to let the chance for a better life slip away. While the voices of his people grew louder, pressure from outside the country grew stronger too. The American visitors were no longer just guests. Now, they became very serious, visiting government buildings every day. They brought new lawyers, new proposals, and sometimes new threats. They offered even more money for schools, even bigger promises of jobs, even hints at special favors for Ibrahim's government if the deal went through. Sometimes they warned quietly that if Ibrahim refused, other countries would get the deal instead, and his country could be left alone and forgotten. Other world leaders began to take an interest as well. Some sent messages of support, encouraging TRAORÉ to demand fairness and protect his country's rights. A few leaders from nearby African countries visited, sharing stories of deals that had gone wrong, or sometimes offering their own advice about how to get the best for their people. There were calls from Europe, from Asia, from other African nations. Everyone seemed to want a piece of the future at the same time. Powerful business people around the world started to watch closely. Some were interested in the gold and oil. Others just wanted to see if this small African country would stand up to the pressure. News articles were written every day, asking if TRAORÉ could resist such a big offer, or if he would become like other leaders before him, rich for a while, but leaving his country poorer in the end. Inside the president's home, things became more tense. Some advisors were scared. They worried that if TRAORÉ refused the deal, the economy could get worse. So already some foreign banks talked about pulling their support. There were rumors that prices for basic things like bread and fuel might go up if the country lost friends in America or Europe. Some ministers pushed Ibrahim to accept the deal quickly, arguing that a bad deal was better than no deal at all. People are suffering now, Mr. President, one advisor said. They can't wait for promises. They need help today. Ibrahim was not alone. Many people around him still believed in his careful way of thinking. His old friend from the village, the wise judge, and the young professor all encouraged him to keep asking hard questions. "Don't let anyone rush you," said the judge. "Once you sign, it's too late to change your mind." Brought news of other countries that had said no to unfair deals and found new partners who respected their wishes. One evening, a group of university students gathered in the city center. They carried candles and stood quietly, holding signs that read, "Our future is not for sale." They sent a message to Ibrahim, thanking him for listening to the people and asking him to keep their dreams alive. Seeing the photos in the newspaper, Ibrahim felt a deep sense of responsibility. He knew he could not let them down. As the days passed, the Americans tried different ways to convince TRAORÉ. Sometimes they brought gifts and invited him to fancy dinners. Sometimes they sent private messages hinting at the possibility of big trouble if he refused. At one dinner, Mr. Collins, the main American representative, leaned over and whispered, "You have a chance to be remembered as the president who made his country rich. Don't let it slip away, Mr. TRAORÉ." But Ibrahim smiled politely and continued to ask questions. He asked for proof of every promise. He demanded to see real examples from other countries. He asked for independent experts to check the facts. He even invited environmental scientists to talk about the dangers of gold and oil mining. The more he learned, the more worried he became. Some experts explained how oil spills could destroy rivers for years, making it hard for farmers and fishermen to survive. Others told stories about gold mines where workers got sick and forests disappeared. The numbers looked good in the first year, but after a few years, most of the wealth left the country, leaving only problems behind. All this time, Ibrahim did not forget the people who depended on him. He continued to walk in the markets and visit villages, sometimes in secret. He listened to mothers talking about their children, two old men who remembered life before independence, two young people dreaming of new jobs and better lives. Then, one day, a rumor spread that the American company was already making deals with some local businessmen, promising them special treatment if the president agreed. This news worried Ibrahim even more. He started to see the outlines of a much bigger picture, a picture where foreign money, local corruption, and lost land could turn dreams of hope into years of regret. As the protests grew and the world watched, Ibrahim faced the hardest choice of his life. The future of his country, the dreams of its people, and even his own honor were all at stake. He felt the pressure from all sides, but deep down, he knew that the real answer would not come from fear, but from courage and truth. As the days moved closer to his decision, the whole country waited, hoping that their leader would find a way to protect what mattered most. The morning sun rose over the capital city, shining on government buildings, busy streets, and crowded markets. Ibrahim TRAORÉ stood quietly by the window of his office, looking down at the city he had promised to protect. He had barely slept the night before. His mind kept replaying all the meetings, the protests, the hopes and fears of the people. Today he would finally make his decision known to everyone. He took a deep breath and called his assistant, asking for a list of everyone who needed to be invited. This was not a day for secrets. Ibrahim wanted his cabinet, the elders, the young students, teachers, farmers, business leaders, and even international journalists to be there. He wanted the world to see what true leadership looked like in his country. As the big hall filled, a quiet energy spread through the crowd. Some people whispered about what they hoped Ibrahim would say. Others looked nervous, unsure if the right choice was even possible. The American representatives sat in the front row, their faces careful and unreadable. TV cameras were set up ready to broadcast the speech to millions of people both inside the country and around the world. Finally, Ibrahim entered the hall. He walked slowly, greeting people as he passed. He did not wear a suit, just his simple shirt and trousers, the same kind of clothes he wore as a child in his village. He wanted everyone to remember he was one of them, not above them. When he reached the podium, he paused and looked around the room. He could see the faces of children who had written him letters, elders who had trusted him with their hopes, and leaders from other countries watching closely. For a moment, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. But then he remembered his father's words, "Never sell what you can't get back." He began to speak softly, but with confidence. He thanked the people for trusting him, for their patience, and for speaking honestly about their fears and dreams. He explained the journey, how the deal was first proposed, how much it could offer: money, roads, schools, new jobs. He said that he too wanted all these things for his country, but Ibrahim did not stop there. He told the truth about what he had learned. He shared how some promises were clear, but others were hidden in complicated words and legal tricks. He explained that yes, the American deal could bring quick money, but it could also take away control of the gold and oil for decades. He talked about other countries where people had lost their land, their rivers, and even their health because they trusted too quickly. He spoke about the experts, the professors, and the lawyers who had read every page of the agreement. He spoke about the mothers who wanted better schools, but did not want to lose the land where they grew their food. He spoke about the young, people who marched for a future that belonged to them, not to outsiders. The hall was completely silent as Ibrahim paused. Even the TV cameras seemed to wait, as if the world was holding its breath. Then he announced his decision. With a steady voice he said, "I cannot accept the deal as it is. I cannot give away our future for a promise that is not fair to our people." There was a wave of surprise across the room. Some people gasped. Others clapped quietly, then louder as they realized what had just happened. The American representatives looked shocked. Some in the audience wept with relief, others with disappointment, but most felt something they had not felt in years: pride. Ibrahim continued speaking. He said that his country was open to real partnerships, but only on equal terms. He welcomed any company or country who wanted to work together with respect, honesty, and fairness. He promised to keep fighting for good jobs, better schools, and new roads, but never at the cost of the country's soul. He turned to the American representatives and thanked them for their proposal. He invited them to continue the conversation, but asked them to return with a deal that truly respected the rights of the country and its people. The room erupted in applause. People stood and cheered while others hugged or wiped away tears. Even some who had wanted the deal now understood why Ibrahim had said no. They saw that true wealth was not just gold and oil, but the ability to choose your own future. Across the country, radios and TVs carried the news. In the villages, people danced in the streets. Children ran to tell their parents what the president had said. Elders prayed for his strength, while young people shared his words on their phones and computers. But not everyone was happy. Some business leaders and politicians complained that the country had missed its best chance. They worried about the future, about losing foreign investment, about what would happen if other countries turned away. Some foreign investors began to talk about taking their money elsewhere. Prices of certain goods jumped overnight, and there was fear that things would get harder before they got better. The American company sent a statement to the press, saying they were disappointed but still open to future talks. Some foreign governments sent messages of support, while others warned of possible economic consequences. Despite the uncertainty, Ibrahim felt calm for the first time in many weeks. He knew he had done the right thing. He met with his advisors and thanked them for their honesty. He called his mother in the village and told her the news. She reminded him that true courage is not about saying yes to everything, but about saying no when it matters. Over the next days, Ibrahim continued to meet with local leaders and experts. They made plans to invite other companies, maybe from Africa, Asia, or even small local groups, to discuss fairer partnerships. He asked teachers to help students learn more about their own country's history. They would never forget the mistakes of the past. He encouraged farmers and business people to find new ways to work together, using local resources for local benefit. News spread to other countries in Africa. Some leaders sent letters of support. They said that Ibrahim's decision had given them hope that it was possible to say no to unfair deals and still dream of a better future. For many, Ibrahim Traoré became a symbol of hope and courage. People from around the world sent him messages, praising his honesty and strength. His story appeared in newspapers and on TV, inspiring leaders and ordinary people everywhere. But Ibrahim did not celebrate too long. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be hard times, disagreements, and new challenges. But he believed in his people and their ability to create something new, something truly their own. As the sun set that evening, Ibrahim stood once more at his window. He looked at the city, the rivers, and the fields beyond. He felt tired, but also peaceful. For the first time, he saw not just the problems, but the possibilities. He believed that if the people stayed united, listened to each other, and remembered what truly mattered, there was nothing they could not achieve together. After President Ibrahim Traoré's big announcement, the mood in the country changed overnight. In some places, people felt proud and hopeful. In others, there was worry and fear about what would happen next. Ibrahim knew that saying no to the American gold and oil deal was only the beginning of a long journey. The hardest work was still ahead. For the first few days, there was a sense of excitement. In the capital city, people gathered in groups to talk about the president's speech. In villages, families listened to old radios, telling stories about how they felt when they heard the news. Some people said it reminded them of the country's struggle for independence, when leaders long ago had also said no to unfair demands. But as the days passed, reality started to set in. Foreign companies that had been planning to invest pulled back their offers. Some shops ran low on imported goods, and the price of fuel and rice went up quickly. People began to complain that life was getting harder. A few business owners even blamed the president, saying he was too stubborn and that the country might fall behind. Ibrahim listened carefully to the voices of the people. He called for meetings with business owners, farmers, teachers, and community leaders. He asked them to share their worries and their ideas for making things better. Some people shouted at him. Others begged him to find a new deal quickly. Most listened quietly, waiting to hear what he would do next. He did not promise magic solutions. Instead, he told the truth. "We must stand together," he said. "If we work as one people, we can build a better future. We cannot always wait for help from outside. We must use what we have and believe in ourselves." The government quickly set up new programs to support local businesses. They helped small shops buy goods from inside the country instead of from abroad. They encouraged farmers to grow more food and promised to buy their crops at fair prices. Engineers and builders were hired to fix old roads and repair water wells using local materials. It was not easy and the work was slow, but people began to see that progress was possible without foreign help. At the same time, news about Traoré's decision spread to other countries. In Africa and beyond, some leaders praised him for his courage. Few even invited him to speak at conferences about protecting national resources. He became a symbol of honesty and independence. Students in universities wrote essays about his story. Some leaders in other African countries quietly reached out to Ibrahim, asking for advice on how to make fairer deals for their own people. But not everyone agreed with his choice. In some rich countries, business leaders called Traoré difficult or unreasonable. They warned that his country would become too isolated, too poor, and too weak to survive on its own. Some newspapers even wrote that the country was making a mistake it would regret. Ibrahim tried not to worry about the criticism. He remembered how his parents had always taught him that standing up for what was right was more important than being popular. Every night, he read letters from children, farmers, teachers, and elders, thanking him for protecting their land. Some letters made him smile, others made him cry, but all of them gave him the strength to keep going. Slowly, things began to change for the better. Local businesses started to grow, new shops opened, selling goods made inside the country. Farmers worked together in groups, sharing tools and seeds. Women formed cooperatives to make crafts and food products, selling them in markets, and even sending some to neighboring countries. A group of young engineers invented a way to purify river water using simple filters made from local clay. This idea spread quickly, and soon more villages had clean drinking water than ever before. Teachers started new lessons about history, teaching children about their country's natural wealth and the importance of making wise decisions. Ibrahim also invited other companies from Africa, Asia, and even South America to visit. He welcomed their proposals, but he made the same rule for everyone. If you want to work with us, you must respect our land, our people, and our laws. We will be partners, not servants. Some companies agreed and brought fairer deals. Others walked away, but that was fine with Ibrahim. He was also careful to make the new partnerships transparent. Every deal was made public, with details printed in newspapers, and posted on government websites. People could ask questions, give feedback, and even suggest changes. This new honesty helped build trust between the government and the people. As the months went by, some of the old worries began to fade. The economy was not growing as fast as it would have with the American deal, but it was growing steadily and more fairly. There were fewer arguments in the markets and more children. In school, even when things got hard, people reminded each other that they were building something that would last. Ibrahim's story started to inspire others. In neighboring countries, students and activists held meetings about protecting their own resources. Some leaders spoke out, asking for more respect from foreign companies. People started to believe that Africa could stand tall, not just as a place of riches for others, but as a home of hope and pride. Of course, challenges remained. Sometimes, storms destroyed crops, or old factories broke down. Sometimes, people still argued about the best way to move forward. But now, there was a new spirit in the country, a belief that together, they could solve their problems. For Ibrahim, the greatest reward was seeing his people's confidence grow.
Oh.
One evening, he visited his childhood village. The same dusty roads, the same old trees, but now, children ran to greet him with smiles. They showed him their new books, their clean water well, and a small playground built by the villagers themselves. An old woman, his first schoolteacher, gave him a hug. "You made us proud," she whispered. "You showed us that we do not need to sell our future for easy money." Ibrahim smiled, but he also reminded everyone, this is only the beginning. Our journey will be long and sometimes hard. But as long as we walk together, we will never lose our way. As the sun set over the fields, Ibrahim felt at peace. He knew there would always be temptations to take the easy road, but he also knew that by choosing what was right, his country had chosen dignity over quick riches, hope over fear, a future they could call their own. The story of Ibrahim TRAORÉ, who said no to a powerful deal and chose the harder, honest path, would be told for generations. It would remind everyone that true wealth comes not from what is taken, but from what is built together with courage, wisdom, and love for home.